According to the giant media company Forbes, in December 2019, South African industrialist and mining tycoon Patrice Motsepe had a net worth of $2.6 billion US. This is up from $2.4 billion US in March of the same year, which is an increase of $200 million US in just 9 months. Dr. Patrice Motsepe is South Africa's first and only black billionaire in United States dollars. In 2013, Patrice became the first African to sign the Giving Pledge. The Giving Pledge is a campaign founded by American investor, billionaire, the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, together with friend, billionaire, and technology entrepreneur Bill Gates. The purpose of the Giving Pledge is to encourage the world's wealthiest families to make a commitment to giving away at least half of their wealth over their lifetimes to philanthropic causes. In his Giving Pledge letter to Warren Buffett, Patrice wrote, "My parents taught me about business and entrepreneurship, and also about the duty of giving and caring for the poor and marginalized." In 2017, in celebration of their 100th anniversary, Forbes honored Patrice Motsepe as one of the 100 greatest living business minds alongside Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos, just to name a few. And in March 2020, the Motsepe family donated 1 billion rands with the, and I quote, "the primary objective of saving lives and slowing and restraining the spread of the coronavirus." Now, there's many definitions of success as there are people in this world. But unless your definition of success involves you spending the rest of the days of your life meditating in the mountaintop somewhere and giving up all worldly pleasures, Patrice Motsepe has lived a successful life. And if, like me, you are interested in finding out how he got there, this video is for you. Kgosi Augustine Motsepe was a chief of the Makau clan of the Tswana people. He was a teacher turned businessman during the apartheid years in South Africa. A politically active man he managed to successfully force a Canadian company under the name of Luca Minerals to pay royalties for the rare metal vanadium which they were mining in his tribe's land. Even though this took place over 40 years ago, it is still disputed in South African courts as to whether the land actually belonged to the Makau people. Some people believe that it belonged to 94 families which had been evicted from their own land by the then ruling Nationalist Party. Additionally, some people believe that the 500 million rands which had been paid out by the mining company was never shared with these 94 families, nor the Makau people. Augustine was an outspoken critic of the apartheid government and its laws, and therefore, like many other black South Africans who were deemed to be a threat to the establishment, was condemned to live in the rural areas, particularly in Hammanskraal in the northern areas of Pretoria. Augustine's wife, Kay Motsepe, a nurse by profession, had been born in the popular South African township, Soweto, in Johannesburg. It is also here that on the 28th of January 1962, she gave birth to a young baby boy. Augustine, being the man that he was, decided to name his son Patrice, after Patrice Lumumba, the first Prime Minister of the Republic of the Congo, who would also become one of the first black African leaders in the post-colonial age. In retrospect, this would prove somewhat prophetic, as Patrice Motsepe himself, now only a baby boy, would grow up to carry the title of first black African thing in a lot of ways. Patrice Motsepe's father, Augustine, opened up a grocery store, followed by a tavern and a restaurant. The tavern became successful, becoming a liquor distributor by affiliating with South African breweries, and it became popular, especially amongst the men who worked in the mines. His father would wake up the young baby boy, 6 to 8 years of age at the time, to come join him sell liquor to the mine workers who frequented the shebeen. It is during this time, at a very tender age, that Patrice learned the basics of business. For example, he remembers that every time his father made a profit, he would invest it back into the business. But perhaps, most importantly, is the fact that as he stood behind that counter, serving his father's customers, he got to understand the basic, mundane, day-to-day lives of the mine workers, the men that he would later have to lead. He was only 8 years old when his father told him that he'll have to take over the family business when he grows up, since they made more money when he was the one behind the counter. But it had become apparent quite early on to Patrice that he didn't want to spend the rest of his life operating grocery and liquor stores. Patrice could not stand the long hours and the drudgery. This was too much hard work for him, and he decided that he needed to pick a career that would keep him as far away from the family business as possible. This is how he came to the decision that he would study law. However, he also mentions that growing up in a business environment and spending a lot of time behind the counter at a young age, he wanted to pursue his first passion, which was entrepreneurship. He also likes to mention that a lot of people are not aware that there were a lot of very successful black businessmen under apartheid South Africa, and he grew up in front of this man. He also grew up in front of the late Richard Maponya, who stands today as one of the first black retailers in South Africa. Above this, he also mentioned that his grandfather was an entrepreneur and his mother ran the family grocery store. In fact, as it turns out, his grandparents ran a very successful general dealership. Patrice's father, Augustine, hated the racial segregation in the education system, in which black students received subpar, low-quality education in what was called Bantu education as compared to their white students. Now, as it turns out, Patrice's great-grandfather, from his maternal side, came from Scotland. Even though this was the case, Patrice was classified under the old South African government as African. So this means that Augustine had to go through great lengths, jumping many hurdles, in order to make sure that all his children, including Patrice, went to an African-speaking Catholic school in Alwal North in the Eastern Cape. Now, there were two reasons for Augustine to take his children there. The first one was that he wanted them to speak good Afrikaans, since speaking Afrikaans came as a benefit under apartheid South Africa. But number two, he wanted them to receive good quality education. And both of these desires were fulfilled when Patrice said, "At boarding school, I spoke better Afrikaans than any other language. Even at school, I had to be first. For me, it was always about hard work, blood and sweat, and coming out top." Upon finishing high school, Patrice left the country to pursue a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Swaziland, and when he came back, he completed an LLB degree from the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. In 1988, he joined one of the big 5 corporate law firms in South Africa under the name of Bowman Gilfillan, specializing in mining and business law, and the law firm quickly identified him as a superstar. 3 years later, in 1991, he visited the United States of America and spent the year there as a visiting attorney under the law firm McGuire Woods in Virginia. While in America, he continued pursuing his interest in mining and even started collecting books on the subject. Upon returning to South Africa, Patrice continued to represent these mining companies under the law firm he was working for, but he also continued to study the industry in which these mines operated, particularly trying to figure out what it was that made some mines succeed while others failed. Now, at this point in time, South Africa only had huge mining companies, employing tens of thousands of employees. At this point, Patrice had been scanning the mining industry for over a decade, and he came to the realization that there were mining opportunities available. However, these mining opportunities, by their very nature, could not be taken up by these mega mining companies. It was apparent to him that there was a niche market, small-scale mining, to be served. This was an opportunity to establish a small mining company that had fundamentally different culture and management from the incumbents that existed at the time. While all of this was happening, Patrice was made the first black partner in the law firm Bowman Gilfillan in 1993. Despite all of this, the following year in 1994, Patrice left Bowman Gilfillan and struck out on his own. Patrice had become restless working for Bowman Gilfillan and decided to found his own company. His company was called Future Mining, and it provided low-level work to mining companies, such as the sweeping of gold dust off rock faces after the blasting has been done. Now, for the first 9 months of his small little company, he couldn't even afford an office, and so the miners used to call him the suitcase man since he worked out of his briefcase. His first big contract was with Anglo-American to sweep a barely productive mine in Orkney in the Northwest Province. But Patrice had not left his lucrative law career to provide sweeping services for these bigger mining companies. He had studied the industry for years now and identified an opportunity to start a small mining company. The services company that he was now running was only supposed to help him put his foot on the door. And at that time, and in the years that followed, a couple of things happened in South Africa and in the mining industry that would change Patrice's career forever. So here's what happened. First of all, the price of gold had been dropping throughout the 80s and 90s. In 1997, the price of gold had reached the bottom of its descent, and therefore it became unsustainable for these large companies to continue running operations employing thousands of people for mines that are not producing that much gold. Therefore, companies that were big, like Anglo, started shutting down or selling off their low-producing, older mining shafts. Patrice then realized that it was a great time for him to buy some of these shafts. However, he didn't have any money and the bank story was crazy and none of them could offer him any loans. This was 1997, 3 years into democratic South Africa, and a man by the name of Bobby Godsell, who was then the chief executive at Anglo-American's gold and uranium division, had been, in his own words, seeking to create capitalists out of people who had no capital. Indeed, Bobby Godsell struck a very nice deal together with Patrice Motsepe. Bobby Godsell would sell the shafts to Patrice for $8.2 million US. But here's the catch: Patrice could have the shafts without putting any money down and would only be required to pay when he had made profit in future. This was great news for Patrice. However, for people looking in from the outside, it was a terrible mistake. You'll have to remember that these were old mines that Anglo had deemed to be unproductive and was willing to shut them down. People questioned then why Patrice thought that he could make them profitable. His decision to take up the mines was so contrarian that Harry Oppenheimer, the then chairman of Anglo-American, who had been the chairman of Anglo for 25 years and chairman of De Beers for 27 years now, asked him, "What makes you think we are going to make money where Anglo has not?" So many people disagreed with Patrice's plans that the president of the Mine Workers Union, James Motlatsi, felt very angry about the deal. He felt that Patrice, having been sold unproductive mines, had been cheated, saying it would be embarrassing to black people if Patrice couldn't make money out of the deal. But Patrice thought that he had figured out a management technique to make these mines profitable. His philosophy was that the employees and the company should share both profits and losses. He implemented a low base pay, basically paying workers less than what they would usually get, but coupling that with bonuses should the company do well, basically saying everyone should suffer when the company suffers and everyone should prosper when the company prospers. He laid off 33% of the employees and cut management staff by 50%. He then moved the offices from Johannesburg to Orkney and therefore becoming closer to the mines. He then pumped up production days from 276 days per year to 353 days per year and hired a mining engineer from Anglo by the name of Andreas Wilkins as the chief executive. The restructuring worked so well that within a year, the mines were profitable. Within 3 years, Patrice had paid back the $8.2 million from the deal with Anglo. During that first year, they had to work so hard since they were still working against a gold price that was still declining. Over the years, African Rainbow Minerals Gold, or Gold as it was known, which was Patrice's company, continued to enjoy great levels of success, and in the year 2000, in a partnership with Anglo Platinum, they developed a new mine in which they gave 17% stake to non-profit organizations in the surrounding rural communities. By the year 2002, the price of gold was now on the rise, and Motsepe's company, in a partnership with Harmony Gold, which is one of the biggest gold producers in the world, was able to buy more gold shafts from Anglo. And by the same year, owing to a strengthening gold price and a weakening rand, African Rainbow Minerals was able to list on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And ever since then, over a couple of mergers, acquisitions and partnerships, African Rainbow Minerals has continued to grow and diversify its minerals into platinum, iron, nickel, manganese, chrome and coal. In 2003, Patrice Motsepe bought 51% of one of the biggest soccer clubs in South Africa, Sundowns, and in 2004 he bought 100% of the club, thereby gaining 100% control and ownership, and then changed its name from Sundowns to Mamelodi Sundowns, Mamelodi being the place in Pretoria where the club had been founded back in the 1960s. As it turns out, Patrice's uncle, Frank ABC Motsepe, had been one of the founders of the club. During the first decade of the 21st century and way into the early 2010s, the world witnessed what is now called the commodities boom. The commodities boom was a period of time when the prices of physical commodities such as oil, food, chemicals, and of course precious metals rose drastically. Now, as we've already discussed, African Rainbow Minerals trades and has interests in these precious metals such as gold, platinum, copper, and so on. Now, because of this commodities boom, the share price of African Rainbow Minerals, together with Patrice Motsepe's net worth, boomed along. In fact, in 2007 alone, their share price doubled from $12 to $24, pushing up Patrice Motsepe's net worth to over $2.3 billion. This is when we saw Patrice become a billionaire in 2008 and becoming the first African to appear on the Forbes list. That is my very simplistic analysis of how Patrice Motsepe became the man that he is today. And I think it's worth mentioning that there are a lot of voices that try to discredit Patrice Motsepe's success, with some voices saying that he made his money through broad-based black economic empowerment deals that required 26% ownership of any mine to go to black people. But Patrice Motsepe has pushed back against these claims, saying that these laws only came into effect in 2005, and by that time he was already running a successful company and already made his mining deals. Some voices discredit him by saying that he made his money because of political connections, as you might know that he has two brothers-in-law in the cabinet, which the first being the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, and the second being the Minister of Energy, Jeff Radebe. But when I look at Patrice Motsepe, I see a man who seized and took all the opportunities that he was afforded. And I mean, who could blame him for that? Alright, you've now reached the end of this video, but before you leave, may you please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. I really appreciate you watching these videos, and if you know anyone else who'd like this kind of content, may you please share this channel with them. And if you've got any comments either about the channel in general or about this video specifically, may you please leave those comments down in the comment section below. I'll take my time to respond to each and every one of these comments. And yeah, enjoy your day and I'll see you next time. Peace.